I'm still shaking, even now, weeks after it all went down. I'm sitting in my dorm room, looking at the letter from the dean's office, and a part of me still can't believe how much my life turned upside down. And then, with one single screenshot, how quickly it righted itself. My name is Alex. I'm 19, and I'm a sophomore at Northwood University. Or at least, I was a sophomore. This story starts back in March, right before spring break, and it involves Professor Davies, my Organic Chemistry 2 midterm, and a severe, utterly terrifying allergic reaction. Let me set the scene. I'm a biology major on a full-ride academic scholarship. My family isn't well off. My mom works 2 jobs, and my dad passed away when I was little. This scholarship isn't just a ticket to an education. It's my entire future, my chance to break the cycle. To keep it, I have to maintain a 3.7 GPA. Organic Chemistry 2, or OChem, as everyone calls it, is notoriously difficult. Professor Davies, a man in his late 50s with a perpetually rumpled tweed jacket and a gaze that always seemed to be evaluating your intelligence, and usually finding it wanting, taught it. He was brilliant, no doubt, but he was also known for being rigid, unapproachable, and utterly unforgiving when it came to his rules. Rule number 1, if you're late, you don't enter. If you leave, you don't return. Exams are sacred. He had a particular disdain for disruptions, which to him meant anything that deviated from his meticulously planned lecture schedule. Now, for context, I have a severe peanut allergy, like life-threatening. I carry 2 EpiPens with me everywhere. Everyone who knows me knows this. My close friends, my roommates, even some of my professors. I'm usually meticulous about checking ingredients, avoiding cross-contamination, and generally being hyper-vigilant. But accidents happen, especially when you're rushing and stressed. The OChem 2 midterm was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. It was worth 30% of our final grade. I'd been studying for weeks, sacrificing sleep, caffeine loading, the whole 9 yards. The night before, I'd had dinner at the campus diner. I ordered their usual chicken Caesar wrap, which I'd had countless times. I specifically asked, as always, no croutons please because of a peanut allergy. The server nodded, wrote it down. I thought nothing of it. I woke up Tuesday morning feeling a bit off, a slight tickle in my throat, but I dismissed it as pre-exam anxiety. I grabbed my backpack, my water bottle, and my trusty EpiPens, double-checking they were in my front pocket. I got to the exam hall, room 304 in the science building, at 8:45 a.m., found my assigned seat, and settled in. Professor Davies was already there, meticulously arranging exam booklets, his brow furrowed. The air was thick with nervous energy. As soon as he said, "You may begin," and the scratch of pencils filled the room, I started to feel it. That familiar, terrifying sensation. My throat was getting tighter, that tickle turning into a distinct constriction. My stomach churned. A wave of heat washed over me, followed by chills. My hands, holding my pencil, started to tremble. I knew with a sickening lurch what was happening. It was an anaphylactic reaction. That Caesar wrap must have been cross-contaminated, or maybe they just completely ignored my request for no croutons, and the kitchen staff used shared tongs or cutting boards. Whatever it was bad, and it was escalating fast. My vision started to blur at the edges. I knew I had seconds, maybe a minute, before I couldn't breathe. I tried to stay calm, to think. I needed my EpiPen. I needed help. I raised my hand, my arm feeling heavy as lead. Professor Davies, who was pacing at the front of the room, writing the time on the board, didn't seem to notice. I tried again, my voice a strangled croak. "Professor Davies!" He finally looked over, annoyed. "Yes, Alex, is there a problem? You have 90 minutes, no questions." I'm having an allergic reaction. I managed to gasp, my throat closing rapidly. My chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. My face was hot, probably flushing. He stared at me, his expression uncomprehending, or maybe unwilling to comprehend. An allergic reaction. Now. Alex, this is an exam. You should have anticipated any medical needs before class. This is highly disruptive. He actually sighed. "I need my EpiPen," I choked out, pointing weakly to my pocket, "and to go to the health center." He frowned, a deep line appearing between his brows. "An EpiPen. Is this truly urgent? You're not trying to get out of the exam, are you? I've heard that one before." I was starting to panic, my chest heaving, a wheezing sound coming from my lungs. "Professor, I can't breathe. I'm serious." A few other students around me were starting to look up, murmuring. One girl, Sarah, in the row in front of me, gasped, "Professor, her face is really red. She looks like she's swelling." Professor Davies finally seemed to register some level of urgency, but his response was still rooted in his rigid rules. "All right, fine. You can't stay here if you're going to disrupt the other students. Go to the health center. But if you leave the exam room, you are not permitted to return, and your exam will be marked as submitted in its current state." He walked over to my desk, took my unfinished exam booklet, and scribbled "disrupted, left room" across the top in red ink. Then he pointed to the door. "Go." I was barely coherent, my lungs screaming for air. I stumbled out of my seat, my legs wobbly, grabbing my EpiPen from my pocket. I could feel my airway constricting further with every agonizing breath. I fumbled with the EpiPen, adrenaline surging through me, but my hands were shaking violently. As I reached the door, he opened it for me, and I vaguely heard him say to the class, "All right, everyone, focus. Back to your exams. Let's not let this incident distract us." Then he closed the door firmly behind me. I heard the click of the lock. He had locked me out. I was in the hallway, alone, gasping, my body starting to go into shock. My eyes were watering, blurring my vision completely. I pressed the EpiPen to my thigh, trying to follow the instructions I knew by heart, counting to 10. The shot hit, and a wave of nausea and tremors washed over me. I slumped against the wall, trying to breathe, trying not to pass out. I knew I needed to get to the health center, but it felt miles away. I pulled out my phone, fingers fumbling. I tried to call Chloe, my roommate, but my hands were shaking too much to dial. I managed to hit 911. "911, what's your emergency?" a calm voice asked. "Allergic reaction. Can't breathe. Northwood University, science building. Alex." I managed to croak out before my vision went dark. I woke up in the campus health center, then eventually transferred to the local hospital. I was hooked up to an IV, receiving fluids and antihistamines. My throat was raw, my body ached, and I was utterly exhausted. The doctor said if I had waited longer, I might not have made it. The 911 call and the quick response of the campus emergency services saved my life. Chloe was there, frantic, having been called by the health center after I was identified. She burst into tears when I finally opened my eyes. "Oh my God, Alex, I was so worried. What happened? Are you okay?" "Peanuts," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Caesar Rep and Professor Davies. He locked me out." Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief. "He what? Are you serious? During an allergic reaction?" I nodded, feeling a fresh wave of anger. "He said I was disrupting the exam." Over the next few days, as I slowly recovered, the anger festered. I failed the OChem 2 midterm, a big, fat 0. Not because I didn't know the material, but because I had been physically unable to complete it. That 0 tanked my GPA. My scholarship, my lifeline, was now in jeopardy. I immediately filed a formal complaint with the dean's office, detailing everything that happened, from my attempt to alert Professor Davies to him locking me out of the classroom. Chloe and Sarah, the student who saw my reaction, both gave statements corroborating my account. A week later, I received an email asking me to meet with Dean Albright. She was a stern woman, known for her commitment to upholding university policies. I walked into her office, heart pounding, ready to explain everything again. She listened patiently, nodding occasionally, but her expression remained neutral. "Alex," she began after I'd finished, "I've reviewed your complaint, as well as the statements from Miss Carter and Miss Jenkins. I've also spoken at length with Professor Davies." My hopes rose. Surely she would see how egregious his actions were. Professor Davies states that while he recognized you were experiencing a medical event, he also has a strict policy regarding exam disruptions, which is clearly outlined in his syllabus and was reiterated at the start of the exam. He claims he offered you the option to leave, which you exercised. He forced me to leave. I interjected, my voice rising. I couldn't breathe, and he marked my exam disrupted. He closed and locked the door behind me. Dean Albright held up a hand. He states that he closed the door to minimize further disruption to the other students, and it locks automatically for security reasons. He denies intentionally locking you out. Furthermore, he maintains that he did not prevent you from seeking medical attention, but rather facilitated your exit from the classroom to do so. He didn't call for help. I protested. He just told me to go.
Then a thought, a tiny flicker of hope, sparked in my mind. Chloe and I were talking, venting, when she mentioned something. Remember how Professor Davies always bragged about his fishing trips? Like, constantly? He'd show us pictures of his catches, even during office hours. He was obsessed. I remembered he talked about fishing almost as much as he talked about chemistry. His prized possession, other than his PhD, was his fancy bass boat. And then it hit me. I'd seen him walking past my dorm window, usually in the early mornings, holding a fishing rod and wearing a ridiculous hat. He often had his phone in his hand, fiddling with something. I had a long, detailed conversation with Chloe. Chloe, you know how he always had his phone on him, and he loved talking about his fishing app, the one he used to track prime fishing spots and check tide charts? Yeah, the Angler's Paradise app or something, she replied, curious. What if that app uses location data? I asked, a wild idea forming. What if it tracks where he's been? Chloe's eyes lit up. Oh my God, Alex. Most apps do these days, especially ones that need to know where you are to give you local fishing conditions. The problem was, how would we get that data? We brainstormed for hours. We couldn't hack his phone. We couldn't demand it from him. But then Chloe had another brilliant idea. Wait! He was always tagging himself in photos on his social media, right? Especially with his catches. And he was friends with a lot of students on his public profile because he sometimes posted announcements there. I remembered that too. He was a surprisingly active social media user for an older professor, often posting about his hobbies. And his profile was public. We spent the entire next day, me still a bit wobbly, Chloe on her laptop, going through Professor Davies' public Instagram. And sure enough, there it was. Photo after photo of him with various fish, taken over years. And many of them were geotagged. Not just broadly Lake Serene, but with precise coordinates, showing exactly where he was at the moment the photo was taken, because the fishing app integrated with his social media. We found several posts from the week before my exam. He had tagged a specific spot on Lake Serene, a popular fishing destination about 2 hours' drive from campus, excitedly talking about the perfect conditions for Tuesday morning. But what about the day of the exam? My heart hammered. Would he be stupid enough to... We scrolled. And there it was. A post uploaded at 11:37 a.m. on the day of my OChem midterm. A beaming Professor Davies holding up a massive bass. The caption? Biggest catch of the season. What a glorious morning out on Lake Serene. Perfect conditions today. Got here at dawn. The geotag, the exact same spot on Lake Serene, 2 hours away from campus. My blood ran cold, then hot with a righteous fury. He hadn't been pacing at the front of the room, upholding the integrity of the exam, or minimizing disruption. He had been fishing. He had rushed through my emergency, dismissed my pleas, locked me out, and then gone straight to his beloved fishing spot, 2 hours away while his other students were still taking the exam he was supposedly supervising. He had left campus directly after the first hour of a 2-hour exam, leaving the remaining students unsupervised. His claim that he was upholding the integrity of the exam while he was actually hundreds of miles away was a blatant, monstrous lie. This was more than negligence. It was profound deceit and abandonment of duty. I painstakingly put together a new document. This one was even more meticulous. It included screenshots of his Instagram post with the timestamp and geotag. It included a map showing the distance from campus to Lake Serene. It included the OChem 2 exam schedule, clearly showing the exam ran from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It included the health center's report stating my arrival time at 9:15 a.m., unconscious. It included Chloe and Sarah's witness statements about him locking the door at approximately 9:05 a.m. It was an ironclad case. I requested another meeting with Dean Albright. She looked annoyed when I walked in, probably expecting more futile appeals. "Alex, I thought we settled this matter. I appreciate your persistence, but we cannot reopen a case without new, substantial evidence." "I have new, substantial evidence, Dean Albright," I said, my voice steady, placing the meticulously organized binder on her desk. "Evidence that proves Professor Davies not only failed in his duty of care, but actively lied to you and put other students at risk by abandoning his post during an exam." She raised an eyebrow, a skeptical look on her face. "And what evidence might that be?" "His location history," I said, opening the binder to the page with the Instagram screenshot. The geotag? At Lake Serene, 2 hours away from campus. He claims he was upholding exam integrity. He was actually fishing. Dean Albright picked up the binder. Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened as she saw the screenshot, the geotag, the map. Her face, usually so impassive, contorted with shock, then a slow, burning fury. She flipped through the rest of the document, her jaw tightening with each piece of evidence. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the rustle of paper. Finally, she slammed the binder shut. This is unacceptable. This is a gross dereliction of duty and a monumental breach of trust. He told me he was here, supervising the exam until the end, and then went directly home to catch up on paperwork. "He lied, Dean Albright," I said simply. "He left over an hour early, after locking me out to go fishing." The next few days were a whirlwind. Professor Davies was immediately suspended. The university launched a full internal investigation. Other students from the OChem exam were re-interviewed, and they confirmed he had left the room about 15 minutes into the exam, leaving the TAs in charge and stating he had urgent business. He had clearly orchestrated his lie well in advance. The dean's office also discovered that he had a pattern of leaving his TAs in charge for extended periods during exams, claiming various pretexts, but never with a formal approval. The official outcome came swiftly. Professor Davies was fired, not suspended, but outright terminated. The university then reached out to me with a formal apology from Dean Albright herself. My OChem 2 midterm grade was expunged, effectively removed from my record, and I was given the option to retake it or have the rest of my grades in the class adjusted to compensate. They also confirmed that my scholarship was fully reinstated, and to make amends, they offered me a paid research assistant position for the summer. It still feels surreal. I almost died because of that man's callousness, and then almost lost my entire future because the system protected him. But one screenshot, one piece of irrefutable digital evidence exposed his selfish lie. I took the retake, passed with an A, and my GPA is safely back on track. I'm starting that research assistant position next week. I never got an apology from Professor Davies, but I don't need one. His ruined career, his public disgrace within the academic community, and the loss of his livelihood is more than enough. He prioritized his fishing trip over his student's life and his professional integrity. He thought he could get away with it, that my emergency and the subsequent risk to my future would just be an inconvenient disruption to his perfect plan. He underestimated the power of a desperate student with nothing left to lose and the digital breadcrumbs he carelessly left behind. The fishing trip he so proudly documented became the evidence that sank his career. And that, I think, is a perfect punch-in-the-gut resolve that he'll never forget.